Koushik, as we speak, the Dow has been down nearly 10% in 2 days, and today again it's looking like it's got another 4-5% downside. You are seeing the Nikkei down 10% today in early trade. It got locked down, I think. Trading was paused. Is it a time to be bearish?
I think we should think about our own society and form our opinions based on our circumstances and not based on the fortunes and the situation of older, richer economies, which have an entirely different set of problems. Our economy has still a long way to go to fulfill the basic needs of the people. We still have infrastructure to be built. We still have an opportunity to grab our share of the global exports. This has been denied to us by policies of uh, countries like China, which were their strategy and which they are fair to adopt. But in the current circumstances, we are coming to a point where such strategies will not be sustainable in the future. And this gives us the opportunity in many sectors in which we are the lowest cost producer in the world, but China is the lowest cost seller in the world. Sectors such as steel, India has tremendous advantages because we have the market, we have the workers, we have the engineers, we have the management, and we have the capability to produce downstream products. And in these kind of industries, there are tremendous opportunities in the future, and these kind of dislocations and epochal events where the architecture of the world changes provide tremendous opportunities for these sectors to have a tailwind which could run for 5, 10, 15 years.
Well, you mentioned steel. I just want to highlight the point I showed you yesterday of the second largest producer of steel in China making a $1 billion loss last year. It essentially means that they are selling their produce below cost.
Yes, that's what it
And
means.
when they do that, and when they export to a country like us, it makes the similar sized company, because when you notice that is also a 25 million ton capacity, and JSW and Tata Steel are almost at the same size, maybe a few million here or there. So these two companies are at a disadvantage vis-a-vis that second largest company. And we don't know what the first producer, the largest company, is doing. So when this kind of a trend happens and when tariffs come in, how will it help our Indian companies?
I think that we are unnecessarily getting worried about tariffs. Firstly, the tariffs are applicable only on portion of the exports of India. Uh, they are by and large exempt for IT and pharma, and these constitute a very large portion of our exports, and also the petroleum and oil goods. These are also exempt by and large from such tariffs. So this is the first point I would like to make. Second point is that traditionally a country applies tariff on a good. Say a category of goods with a particular HS code will have a particular tariff. This is the usual practice. But in the current circumstance, US has applied a tariff based on two factors, namely the origin of the country and the product, which makes every product from the same product coming from two different countries, essentially two different products. One is like coffee and one is like tea. So if we now take, let's say, the landed cost of iPhone in the US, so now let's say India is 5% costlier than China in making iPhone 16. Now, if you apply 27% duty on top of that in from India and 54% from US, now India will become a cheaper producer than China because the tariffs are differential tariffs. Essentially, the production from India becomes like a giffen good in the same category of goods. And this actually can give you more sales when the income of the customer is dropping, because the substitution effect, that is the substitution of imports in America from other countries to India, could be more than the drop in the markets of US because of the income effect of the people being not able to buy the same amount because the prices will go up due to tariffs. This does not seem to have seeped into the psyche of investors, and so we are looking at tariffs like a absolute and not a relative basis. You know, it's a little
It's a top-down view. There's no bottom-up view.
it's a top down view, and we are just seeing it in absolutes and not in relatives. The there is a joke, about two friends walking in a forest and a bear starting to chase them, and one of them, you know, bends down to put on his shoes. So the other guy says that, why are you bothering to put on your shoes? We can't run faster than the bear. So he says, no, I don't need to run faster than the bear. I need to run faster than you. I think we just need to run faster than the countries who are having much higher tariffs. I think that's what we should see, that what will be the new landed cost of the various goods we export to the US. So as far as US goes, this is what it is. The real risk comes because of the excess capacity now created, which countries like China and its allies like Vietnam, Indonesia may not be able to sell to the US. So this will become excess capacity. There is likely to be dumping in India, and so we should be alert that this dumping doesn't create tremendous harm for our domestic industry. It has happened in the past, 2015 in steel. Many such times it has happened in chemicals, etc. So
Even
the
2008,
yeah.
after 8, the steel industry went into sickness because of dumping and the government not taking cognizance of the need to protect the industry.
So two industries have faced this in the past, chemical and dumping. We may face this in many more industries, and so we have to be more alert. Um, the basic, this situation was inevitable someday or the other, because the savings rate of people in the US and West is much lower than what you would call as equilibrium rate for a society of that order and size. So one day or the other, rebalancing had to happen. The question was what would trigger it. It's like that joke, tell me which city I'll die, I won't go there. Doesn't matter what would have caused it, but this was intended to happen. So now this intended to happen, the demand for this products in those societies will go down. For example, garment is one. It is tremendously excessive consumption in the West. It is This had to happen. If you see most commentators, not economic commentators, social commentators, they're commenting that this kind of consumption is wasteful and excessive. But it was happening for whatever reasons. Now, this had to rebalance. A crisis like this is very likely to reduce it. And in such a situation, the countries like Bangladesh, etc., which are geared only for catering to this, would be caught unawares, and they may, for their own survival, dump these products on our countries at low cost, just to for their own social stability. Countries who have these kind of industries, so the dumping may move from steel, chemicals to a wider range of commodities or goods, and we have to be alert that this doesn't injure our industries.
So you think that we would also need to be thinking of protection at some point in time?
Yes, we have to be very alert. I think that industry and government should work closely.
But why are people in India fearing that this tariff will hurt India more than it will hurt, let's say, China? Are those fears founded or unfounded?
I think these fears are unfounded because generally, I think we have not yet understood the strength of our economy. Uh, is that our economy is in our economy, the economic decisions are taken in a decentralized manner by entrepreneurs, firms, and investors, people who provide capital. We are not a centralized economy. So and we respect capital and wealth tremendously. I think for an economy of our size, the kind of respect that India has for capital and wealth is unique in the world. And so, as I call it, we are a society of Lakshmi worshippers, and therefore the capital is allocated very carefully. So we have not put capital in the wrong places. We have put capital in places where we have a right to win, and we have our place, and where state policies of other countries cannot injure such businesses. So I think that we we ourselves do not understand our strengths, and we have not we have not put capital in places which are where it is very difficult to win. For example, the private sector. This is there in the recent narratives and the recent discussions. There has been a call that the private sector is not investing in deep tech. So far, private sector for good reasons has not invested in deep tech, because who is the customer? The customer has to be willing to buy. It is only recently that the government has started to being more receptive to buy goods made for defense or other sectors from private companies. So, so most of the capital allocated in India is allocated in a very sound basis, in which we have a clear right to win. We may have pain, temporary pain and volatility, but we should not confuse temporary pain and volatility with risk. You know, if you have a very bad migraine, you know, for 2 weeks, you may be not functional, but it is not a cancer.
You're talking about the customer linked buy, which is the government. If you recollect the entire 2008 problem of infra, was that government wanted its corporations to invest in ultra mega power projects and was giving one-sided contracts which are not executable. Like you are giving a contract to a company without factoring in a tariff which they may face in another country from where they have to bring in their raw material entirely. And then you just left that risk taker to bleed, right? So, if you see the history of all big risk taking in India, the risk taker has always been allowed to bleed, whereas I don't think that is the case with the China.
Yeah, the state underwrites the risk there. So essentially, therefore, the private entrepreneurs are like they are uh, they are like agents of the state. You know that it is there.
So, they are fulfilling the agenda of the state.
Ultimately, it is like the state has a kind of one golden share in all these companies. Either it is visible or invisible in some manner. So they are able to dictate the trajectory of these companies.
But in our society, if a state helps a large conglomerate fulfill the agenda of the state, we are so immature as a society in thinking that the state is indulging in cronyism and nepotism. So, who will do that then?
So I think that the secret to doing this is to identify our priorities in research and identify our priorities for strategic autonomy. The second priority is to then see which companies are capable of immediately absorbing grants from the government and converting them into useful things which will provide us deep tech, strategic autonomy, or whatever these needs are. Because you can give people money, but even for companies to take this money and put them to use, it's not easy. You have to measure what is the absorptive capacity of this company. So if you see today, the sectors which have the highest absorptive capacity are like defense companies, pharma companies, companies in auto, engineering, etc. So government should first allocate money to boosting research and capabilities, and they should sequence it in a manner that the first ones are all wins. The first ones you fund are all wins, and they should do it hand shoulder to shoulder with the private sector. So if they allocate X, they should have some partnership with the social sector. I think that this brings us to one important topic. I think that in our country we have missed a very beautiful trick, which is to have the private sector and the public sector work hand in hand. We have many examples where this has happened, and we have created fantastic companies, joint sector companies. In fact, in 1960s, this was discussed between Mr. J.R.D. Tata and the then Prime Minister Nehru. For some reason, it was not adopted. But I think that without our knowledge, we have created joint sector companies.
No, same Tatas have created Titan, which is a joint sector company. Later, 2-3 decades.
Even in divestment, we have created a Hindustan Zinc. It was unconsciously created, but it has proved to be a great success formula.
But we have so much resistance in our country towards government selling a 25% stake to a private player and giving them control by retaining the balance. Even that simple thing is seen as a sellout. Even our media doesn't have the maturity to see what can be the benefits despite having so many examples. A state government has got 1 lakh crore worth of Titan. A state government could never create 1 lakh crore of wealth. It is outside the capacity of a state government to create wealth. But today, that has been achieved. But we still stop a center from doing the same thing. Why are we like this?
I think this is a process of maturity, and it requires this to be taken to the public, to explain to them the contrast, the performance of pure 100% PSUs and with the joint sector companies. Once this contrast is studied and established, and it is placed in front of the public, it will slowly be understood. I think the first is that even the economic experts in India are not cognizance of this as a recipe for success. I think the first is that we should start with experts rather than with the public, and then slowly the idea will gather. I think that the fact that we are not talking about joint sector in a more active manner, rather than we talk about privatization or running PSUs, but we never talk about the middle path of using public sector, where we bring the trust of the government and the efficiency of the private sector and create companies which, like HDFC was created, or ICICI was created, or many companies in the gas sector which have been created in a manner which they run like private sector companies, but they do the work which of a utility or a monopolistic
If you
company.
see in the OMCs, actually private companies were taken over and made public sector. Until the 70s, I think the OMCs were private companies.
Yes.
So you converted private company to public sector. And then the government has had the responsibility of supporting these companies. And then the government supported these companies in a wrong way at a wrong time. That is what created the crisis of 2012, in my opinion. If they had dealt with oil more maturely between 2009 and 12, I don't think you would have had the crisis of 2012 itself. That is one part of the problem was oil. So today we still don't want to deal with public sector with a sense of balance. We are more obsessed about absolute ownership by the state or absolute control with the state. We don't want to cede part ownership, nor we want to cede control. But unless we give control, we are not going to create wealth out of these companies. Technically, on paper, wealth exists, but that wealth will never be created. You will see the company just die. A good example is MTNL. It was supposed to be a great company, but it ended up going bankrupt. Another very interesting company, which was, at one time, a monopoly, is ITI. I don't know why it's valued now like this, but it's been only a decline. It's more a real estate play. Your HMT is another company, but we are still not learning our lessons in selling companies which are non-core, even today. Though we have listed every year at least 2-3 companies to sell 26% and allow the private player to do an open offer.
No, I think that we have not separated the public sector into strategically important in terms of and things where the government ownership has a positive impact on the performance of the company. For example, wherever there is mining, there is merit to having a joint sector company rather than just a private sector company. But wherever there is mining and value addition, there is merit to have joint sector companies. Where the technology is moving very fast, there is not too much merit in having uh, pure public sector companies, because simply speaking, they are not in that game.
They should not be in sectors like telecom.
They should not be in sectors like telecom or ITI or anywhere where the rules are changing fast and it requires very fast change. If you recall, in the 2000s, the merely the one uh, tender getting cancelled for a BSNL by the courts, it really upsets its plans, etc. So you cannot have a very bureaucratic process in a very dynamic situation where the market is growing very fast, and if your rollout of your network is delayed by 8 months, 1 year, you may lose tremendous amount of market share. So I think that in strategic sectors, the government should retain some share, and they should allow participation of private sector in a joint sector manner. I think that this, I think that we are yet to understand that this can be a solution. Slowly the understanding is coming. I think that this should be done in a more active manner, so that we don't talk about this privatization and somebody else wanting to make things public, make it into PSU companies. I think this either or debate is should cease by this idea. I think then we'll have a clarity that where the companies have to be very nimble, things are changing fast, those should be divested, and where there is certain benefit for the government to be having a stakeholder in those firms, we should go with that. I think one of the economists recently was mentioning that uh, The US has tremendous private capacity to produce, innovate, and get things done. He says that the China on the other hand has the capacity in the both the the state capacity and the private capacity to get things done. I think in certain important sectors like railways or mining, energy, by creating joint sector companies, we may have that capability of the state to get things done, and we may have the capability of the state to be very nimble and innovate and get things done quickly. I think that we should retain both. It is not a either or. I think we should try to retain both in certain sectors to get the work done. In fact, this economist in his speech recently said that he said that the US is trying to put up a fast rail and they'll never be able to do it because the state doesn't have the capacity to execute. I think we should learn from these kind of examples, and we should not go fully one way or the other, and apply nuanced solutions where they are necessary.
You said it is not the time to be bearish, but what can turn the mood into a bullish mood over a period of time? What are the things that need to happen from here?
At the aggregate level, the Indian market cap may be very small, but we have a very large economy in terms of size of the economy. For India market to do well, even a small amount of capital allocation from outside the world, from outside India, can completely change the equation. For many people, say people in the US or Europe, India offers a very uh, great opportunity to diversify their, for their risk profile or their growth profile from those kind of economies. So therefore, for them, this is very valuable. The problem is that the Indian market is very small, and at the global level, we are like one Apple or just the market cap of one company. We are not very large. So our problem is that we cannot absorb capital. It's not that capital may not be able to come. Our problem currently is that maybe we don't have the kind of companies or the absorptive capacity to absorb very large amounts of capital. I think till we have forgotten in the last 5 years, due to the flows of SIP and retail investors, we have forgotten how volatile the stock market can be on both sides when FII flows started coming in. In the last 5 years, a lot of FII selling has taken place, but a lot of it was absorbed by
Domestic.
the domestic investors. Now, if we come to a situation where domestic continue in some way, maybe they moderate their SIP, but they continue their SIP, and foreign funds, institutions, pension funds, they decide to diversify their portfolios and put a small amount of money into the market can go up on many reasons. I think so. Therefore, we should not be extremely bearish on these reasons. I think we have not allocated capital wrongly. We have not
Overinvested.
we are not overinvested. We are not subsidizing things. We are not doing unsustainable things in creating industries or doing anything. And so we have, and we have, our many of our problems are opportunities. For example, around 6.5 crore people live in slums, and if we create a blueprint for solving this problem, this can be a great driver of economic growth for 10-15 years. And you can, like we are trying to provide drinking water to everybody, electricity to everybody, you can provide housing to
Urban
everybody,
housing.
and this can be a driver. We don't have high speed rail. I mean, once we establish one example and show that uh, this works, then we can push that, and that can be a driver of growth. This
So how
can
do you see
absorb.
this Vande Bharat as an example? Because there's a lot of criticism that, do we really need it? Do we really need such luxury trains? What about the common man?